Good evening, everybody. Or is it afternoon? It's a joy to be here and to take us through this session of performing the literature search. And pardon me if I'm going to tell you things you already know. We can assume it's a refresher course if that's the case. And as we sit here to go through this session for the sake of those who will be supervising, I hope that at the end of the session, we'll go away with something that will help us as we supervise our trainees. So our focus for this afternoon would be on why I would like us to understand the context of performing a literature search. Then we'll delve into the process of performing the search. So before we go into performing the search, we'll look at why do we search for literature at all? Then we'll look at some search preliminaries, the things that we need to do to enable us to search more effectively. And then we'll look at the search techniques, some skills that we have to acquire in order to be able to search better. Then we'll look at performing the search itself. Then I'll take us through creating alerts, which are means of also finding literature for the literature review, which we can pass on to our trainees as we supervise them. So there are many reasons why we search for literature, and these ones here are by no means exhaustive. Some of the reasons, which you probably realized yesterday, is to answer a research question. And then when we search the literature also, it helps us to focus our research idea. We normally would start from broad, then as we find literature, we narrow the research idea. But our focus for this session is the third bullet, which is to conduct a literature review. So we're going to focus on this reason for searching the literature, to conduct a literature review, because we are looking at research methods, and a literature review is mandatory for any research output. Another reason why we do search the literature, which is very important for the health discipline, is to do a systematic review. So for some of these reasons, we need to perform searches and to find literature in order to carry out our research. Now, the focus is going to be on the literature review. Doing a literature review presupposes that knowledge accumulates. It tends to build on the idea that we can learn from and build on what others have done. So that's the whole idea of the literature review. And the review rests on the principle that scientific research is a collective effort. It's teamwork. It's one in which many researchers, including all of you, contribute, and results are shared with other people. Although some studies may be especially important and a few individual researchers may become famous, one study is just a tiny bit, a tiny part of the overall process of creating knowledge. The studies that we do today will build on those of yesterday. So we search the literature to find relevant studies. So this is the context in which we perform the literature search. We search the literature so that we find relevant studies. We read them in order to learn from, compare, replicate, or criticize. So that's the context within which we search the literature, so that we can build on knowledge. Now, to appreciate the importance of performing a literature search, it is important to discuss the goals of a literature review, which you can see on your screen. The first one I'd like to talk about is that one goal of the literature review is to demonstrate a familiarity with the body of knowledge and establish credibility. A review tells a reader that the researcher knows the research in an area and knows the major issues. And you need to have read the literature. You need to have searched the literature to find these literatures and point to them and use them. A good review increases a reader's confidence in the researcher's professional competence. So these are things we should communicate to our trainees as we supervise them. The second goal of a literature review is to show the path of prior research and how a current project is linked to it. A review outlines the direction of research on a question and shows the development of knowledge. A good review places a research project in a context and demonstrates its relevance by making connections to a body of knowledge. Hence, the need to do a literature search. The third point I'd like to make about the goals of a literature review is that it is to integrate and summarize what is known in an area. A review pulls together and synthesizes different results. Thus, a good review points out areas in which prior studies agree, disagree, and major questions remain. For many of our students, they don't appreciate that. Many people just list the studies, but it's more than just listing. It's critiquing, it's comparing. So it collects what is known up to a point in time and indicates the direction for future research. The fourth point for a goal of a literature review is that we learn from others and stimulate new ideas. So as we perform the search in the literature, we find studies we learn from. And so the review, which is composed of this literature that we find, tells what others have found so that a researcher can benefit from the efforts of others. In this case, a good review identifies blind alleys and suggests hypotheses for replication. It divulges procedures or techniques and research designs worth copying so that a researcher can better focus hypotheses and gain new insights. So all the goals that have been listed here can only be achieved by performing a literature search, where we find the studies and we benefit from them as we try to achieve the goals that are mentioned on this slide. Now, just a word about a systematic review, since I don't know if some of your trainees will be doing systematic reviews, but let me say that I'm sure you are more well-versed in systematic reviews than I am, but just to let us know that systematic reviews are a type of literature review that uses systematic methods to collect secondary data, critically appraise research studies, and synthesize the findings, either qualitatively or quantitatively. These are designed to provide a complete, exhaustive summary of current evidence relevant to a research question. They provide a synthesis of evidence for a specific topic of interest. So that's basically what a systematic review is. And again, to be able to do a systematic review, we need to know how to perform a literature search so that we can find the literature, synthesize it, and answer the relevant research question we are seeking to answer for our research question. I mentioned that we'd look at search preliminaries. We've already looked at why we should do a search for literature. Now we're going to look at search preliminaries. In this section, we'll look at two items: defining the topic and planning your search. I'm sure you did a bit of the top one yesterday, defining the topic. Now, in order to be relevant in whatever search results we find in our literature search, it's very important that we avoid broad topics in our search, in our desire to search for information. Indeed, broad topics have a place, definitely. We might search for broad topics when we are feeling around. We are not yet sure of what we want to do, and to help us find what is out there, know what has been done, and then we focus our topics. But when it comes to performing a search, in order to answer a research question, we need to be specific in our topic. So we have here two examples of broad topics: diabetes and obesity. Different aspects of these could be looked at in any research. So to be specific, for example, with diabetes, we could have a topic like barriers to diabetic management, patient and provider factors. So obviously, we are looking at the management of diabetes and barriers to that. We have focused our search, our topic. Then we can now go and perform a search and know what we are looking for, discard what we don't need. So it's important that the topic is well defined in order that we can find the relevant literature so that we can answer the question, do our literature review, and answer the research question. So to focus the obesity broad topic, for example, this topic is suggested: influence of the home environment. There are so many aspects of obesity, but this topic is defined in that it's looking at the contribution of the home environment to the development of obesity in children. So when we talk about defining the topic, this is what we mean. And I'm sure that as the trainees approach us, they may or may not come up with the already defined topics. But with this information, as supervisors, I guess we're able to help them define their topics in order to be able to carry out and perform a search for the literature. The next thing under search preliminaries I'd like us to talk about is planning your search. For many of us, students or residents or doing research, I would like to suggest that we just go to the database, type in our research topic, and whatever we find, we look through it and then we use it. But I'd like to encourage us as we supervise our trainees to help them to plan their search. Planning the search involves careful thinking through the search so that, and the process should entail asking questions such as the extensiveness of search, types of material to include, how much time we will give to the search. By the way, searching is very, let me say, time consuming. And so we need to set aside time to do it. So all that has to be sorted out. We need to sort all that out before we embark on the search. How much time we'll give to the search, how far back in time we'll go. For some disciplines, there's a limit to the currency of the research they can use. And I'm sure it is so for the health. So it's important that we communicate this to our trainees so that they know that maybe 20 years literature is not acceptable. Maybe the past 5 years is what is acceptable, so that they know when they are doing their research. We also need to know the approximate number of articles. That is the volume of information that we'll need. This is important because there are different types of research, in that if you take research for an article, for example, the volume of literature you need will not be as much as writing a book for a fellowship. So all that has to be sorted out before you embark on the search. Again, you need to also ask yourself which databases you consult, the libraries you need to go, and any other places, organizations, institutions that you need to go to get the information you need. In searching the literature, you must be careful. You must be careful and systematic and organized. You need to set parameters on your search, and you need to devise a means to keep track of possible sources. There are times when it's not always that when we are sitting behind our computers that new ideas come up. They can come up at odd times. So we need to sort out, we need to communicate to our trainees. There's a need for them to know in advance how they are going to jot down those new ideas that come up, those suggestions that the supervisors might make to them or colleagues might make. Maybe in a conversation, something comes up. It's okay, this is an article I need to consult. You need to sort out for yourselves how you're going to note those ideas, the questions that arise, and then the searches that you've done. How are you going to keep track of them? Are you going to use a paper folder or a computer file? These are all things that need to be sorted out so that you don't find yourself repeating the same search. Planning the search enables the searcher to keep organized and proceed systematically with the search. So having talked about the search preliminaries, we now delve into the search techniques. We talk about the search techniques. There are different ways by which we search the literature. We perform to find information in order to carry out our research. Suggested here are 3 approaches. Browsing. I'll go into detail for each of them after this. Searching for a specific reference or a keyword search. So what does it mean when we say we browse? We browse when we don't know what we want. We could go to a database and allow ourselves to become familiar with the database, not knowing what exactly we want there yet, but just looking around, possibly to find out if it's relevant at all to our topic. So that would be considered browsing. In many databases, browsing may be done by subject discipline. So there's a link to the list of subjects or browse by subject, which a person can click on and see if your area is addressed in the database. You could also browse by title list of journals or books. Where available, you could also browse by publisher available. Maybe there's a particular publisher you're interested in. However, this is not available for all databases. But for Hinari, you do have that option because Hinari sources materials from different publishers. So maybe you are looking for Springer, you are looking for Elsevier or Taylor and Francis. You could just click on that and see what they have in the database. So that's for browsing. Now, for a specific reference, there are times when we find references. And when we get those references, they may be in articles we have read. We go to the list of references and we find references that we think are useful. Or you as supervisors could even suggest references to the trainees. So it's important for them to find that full text. But for them to be able to find the full text, they need to appreciate what the specific reference consists of. So a reference would consist of pieces of information that allows the searcher to find that specific information, the full text of that work. Over here, you have the specific reference for a journal article and one for a book. And you'll appreciate this more when tomorrow you look at referencing, but it's very important because without any bit of information here, it will be very difficult to find the full text. So it's important for us to communicate to our trainees the importance of appreciating every piece. Sometimes we'll be giving the DOI. The DOI compresses all the information in the reference so that if you just click on the DOI, you get the full text. So these are references of an article and a book. And this is what, so the search might be just to look for a full text of a specific reference. So now we'll go to the option that we'll be focusing on for this session. That is performing a literature search by doing a keyword search. And the keyword search might be a single keyword or concept, or multiple keywords or concepts. We use the keyword search when a research topic is defined, like the previous ones I made reference to. So what are the steps for a keyword search? These are things that our trainees should be made aware of. I find it important that when we embark on a search, it's important to write down the topic. It doesn't help to keep it in our minds, but it's important that the topic is written out. Then with the topic in front of us on paper, you identify the keywords or concepts in the topic. Now, when we talk about keywords or concepts, we are talking about, it doesn't include conjunctions. It doesn't include prepositions. It is the topic stripped of all that makes it communicate. That's basically what we are saying about identifying. We'll be looking at an example in a bit. So it's stripping the topic of all that makes it communicate and identifying the import, those key concepts for which you are doing the research. That's the second step. And the next thing is to consider the alternative keywords. And when we talk about alternate keywords or concepts, it's not necessarily the English meaning of the word, but the broader term of the concept or the narrower term of the concept. Those are the options that we look at. And we are better able to identify the alternate concepts if we have been familiar with the literature, if we have read wide and understood the area of our research. So having done that, the words that we've identified and their alternatives become our search terms. So that's the process through which we go. We first identify the keywords or the concepts in the topic. We try and find the alternate keywords or concepts. These key concepts that we've identified become our search terms. But then we are still not ready to conduct a search. We need to understand the Boolean operators and how to combine these search terms that we've identified from our research topic in order to carry out a search. So we're going to look at the Boolean operators and what they mean when we use them for a search. So this is the topic that we are going to consider. And let's say we've written out the topic. Effect of increased physical activity on hypertension control in patients with moderate hypertension. So the suggested key concepts are here. You may have other views, but definitely it's allowed. So we identify physical activity, hypertension control, and then patient. So for alternate keyword or concepts for physical activity, for example, we have a narrower term, exercise, then workout, then walking. These are examples of physical activity. So in communicating this to our trainees, we can help them appreciate the fact that we could think in terms of what does physical activity consist of? Because somebody may be looking at a research that deals with just an aspect of physical activity. Or somebody may have done a work that deals with just exercise. So when we identify these alternate keywords and we search for them, it allows us to find all there is available in the literature on that concept. The other concept identified in the topic is hypertension control. So suggested alternate concepts are blood pressure control, hypertension management, hypertension prevention. Then we have the third concept, which is patient. So we are looking at the older adults aged 26 to 45. Again, this may be defined by the researcher. So you realize that when we look at this topic, we have stripped it to the bare minimum of the topics that we are interested in, the concepts that we are interested in. Physical activity, hypertension control, and then patients. So as I mentioned earlier, these search terms identified here, these key concepts identified here are our search terms, but we still are not ready to perform a search. So we'll see what we need to understand or help our trainees understand in order for them to perform the search. So the Boolean operators that we need to appreciate are and or not. These are used to create search statements that allow us to perform searches. So the and. You remember that we identified 3 concepts in the topic: physical activity, hypertension control, and patient. The and is normally used to combine 2 or more different or unrelated concepts. So in this example, we have physical activity and hypertension control, which are not related in any way. So preferably the and is used to link 2 or more different or unrelated concepts. So the example here is physical activity and hypertension control. So having created this search statement with the Boolean operator and, we are now ready to perform a search. Now, when we link concepts with and, what happens is that the information retrieved must include all our stated concepts or keywords. So if I search the literature, let's say I search Hinari or Google Scholar or PubMed for physical activity and hypertension control, the database understands that the research work I'm looking for, whether they are articles or reviews or clinical trials or whatever, they should contain both of these concepts. So this and generally retrieves fewer results. So what we mean is that if a paper is there that has physical activity and doesn't have hypertension control, the database does not give it up as a result because the 2 concepts are not present. So this is what we mean. And finds articles that have both keywords. So the literature retrieved will be the intersection of the 2 sets. Papers that have both physical activity and hypertension control. So the and operator tends to give very relevant results, but it also gives fewer results. So this should inform our search as we go on. Now, the more keywords we link together with and, the fewer results we get, as is shown by this diagram. So we now add patient, which was our 3rd key concept that we identified. So you realize that the shaded area is smaller, which means that the literature or papers that have all 3 concepts are fewer than those that have only the 2 concepts. So the trainee should be made to understand that this should inform our search. So if we begin our search with all the concepts that we've identified, and we get, let's say, 3 results, for example, in a database, that is obviously not enough for a literature review. So the trainee needs to understand that the search needs to be done again, but this time, doing it without the least important concept. So I would suggest that the least important concept in this, for example, would be patient for now, because you are interested in papers that talk about both physical activity and hypertension control. Again, it can be left to the judgment of the researcher, but just to help us understand that The more keywords we link with and the fewer the results we get. And if we need to expand our search, it's important that we do away with one of the concepts, and preferably the concepts that we think is least important. That's for and. Now about or, which is the second operator that would like to discuss. The or, contrary to the and, is preferably used for similar concepts. Remember, we identified some alternate concepts. Those concepts will be considered as the similar concepts. So an example would be physical activity or exercise. So when we talk about similar concepts, you can also think of it in terms of the alternate concepts or the related concepts that we identified, whether they are narrower concepts, broader concepts. So long as they are linked, we consider them as synonyms. They all would be used to create a search statement with these concepts. What happens is that when the database carries out the search, it will provide research material that contains at least one of the concepts linked in the search statement. So let's see what that looks like. So OR tends to find articles with at least one keyword or concept. So what this means is that, which that has to be communicated very clearly to our trainees, is that when the search is done using OR, for as long as there's one key concept in the paper, it comes up as a result. So in this case, we get all the papers that have only the term physical activity, all the papers that have only the term exercise, and any that have both terms. So at least one of the concepts. The third concept, the third operator is the not, which is used sparingly, but it's good for our trainees to be aware of this also as we communicate it to them. The not is normally used to narrow a search by excluding a concept. An example of such a search statement would be physical activity, not workout. So depending on the focus of your research, you could exclude such terms or concepts from your search, and the not is used to do this exclusion. So the not would normally eliminate the term that comes after it from the retrieved information, but it will provide information on all the terms that come before it. So in this example, if we carry out a search for physical activity, not workout, we'll get papers that have only the term physical activity and no paper at all that has the term workout. So this is what we get. Everything in the shaded area, but nothing in the unshaded area, which means that there could be good information here, which we'll miss out on because we've excluded the term workout. So this is just a caution as we use the not in doing searches. We've been able to create search statements of the 3 different operators, but the operators may be combined and used in one search statement. So here's an example of such a search statement: physical activity or exercise and hypertension control. So by creating a search statement like this, we are killing 2 birds with 1 stone. What happens is that we get the constants in the results that are produced by the database is hypertension control. And it could be there. The other terms that may be present would be physical activity or exercise or both. So in just one search, we are able to find so many papers. Rather, if we broke it down, we'd have hypertension and physical activity, hypertension control and exercise, hypertension control and physical activity and exercise, and so on. But if we did a search like this, we get all in one search. Preferably, the or statement should be enclosed in brackets or parentheses. So the database then understands what it needs to do when it's enclosed in parentheses. You'd realize that I have put double quotation marks around some of the key concepts, and that's for a reason, which I'm about to explain. This is what we call the phrase search. So it's when we put a string of 2 or more words in double quotation marks, we are asking the database to search for that phrase or concept as though it were one word. So it will not split the words, it will give us results that keeps the concepts together or the words together as one. So then we tend to get more relevant and results and fewer than if we did it without quotation marks. So an example, as I said earlier, is physical activity, hypertension control, diabetic management, and so on. Now, we've done the keyword search, but I'd like to take us through another way of doing a physical search, which is known as the Pico. The Pico process is actually a mnemonic and is mainly used in the health sciences to carry out a search. And the Pico stands for different things, and it helps in the framing and answering of clinical or healthcare related questions. So instead of doing a keyword search, you could use this approach in identifying your concepts, which is the Pico. And the P is the patient or population or problem. And the questions that our trainees would have to ask to be able to identify this is: who is your patient? Age, sex, race or patient, primary problem, health status. All this will inform what the P is in the research topic. Then the I is for intervention. What do you plan on doing for the patient? Diagnostic test, medication, procedure. This will be identified as an intervention and considered a concept on its own. Then we have the C, which is the comparison. What alternative are you considering? Another test, medication, or procedure, or is it watchful waiting? So this will help you identify what the comparison is. The O is the outcome. What do you wish to accomplish? The accurate diagnosis, relieve or improve symptoms, or maintain function. The Pico model may be used also to formulate a concise clinical question. So in coming up with a topic, it might be helpful to ensure that each of these is represented, but it's not always, however, that every bit of this mnemonic is present, but it helps and guides. And then when you go to search the databases, we may not use all these terms in your search. If you retrieve too many results, add more terms to your search or add more specific terms. So this is the Pico, and I think it's very useful for the health sciences, medicine, and for you. So it's helpful to communicate this to the trainees so that they can identify their key concepts by using this mnemonic Pico. So I would like us to do an exercise just to appreciate and understand the Pico. I'll need you to help because I'm not well versed in the health sciences. So what would we identify in this topic as the population or the patient or the problem? Another thing we need to take note of as we perform the search for information to carry out our research is to take note of the fact that our objectives and research questions are key in the search for relevant literature. They help us, the research questions and the objectives help us to be focused. So that's it's very important that the trainees bear that in mind as they do their search for the literature. It's important also for us to take note that the databases help us to refine our search. They help us to refine our search to make them more relevant to the topics that we are searching for. The filters may appear after our search in the sidebar of the database. I'll show an example in a bit. For the advanced search option, we limit our search before we carry out the search. And the options available would include limiting by article type, publication date, subject, publisher, or language. This is a choice that the researchers or the trainees can make before they carry out the search. And this is normally found in the advanced search option of the databases. The filter bar is what appears after we carry out a search. It's normally to the left of the screen and also allows us to focus and refine our searches further. So it really, in a sense, it really doesn't matter the search because you have the option to focus it further in the option provided by the filter bar, normally on the left of the screen when you carry out a search. So here's an example of an advanced search option. This is Hinari. So you have here the field. This allows you to choose where you want the search to be carried out, whether it's the author field, the title field, or the abstract field, and so on. On the other hand, you can also leave it at all fields. Then adjacent search box is where you enter the keyword. Then you have the choice for your Boolean operators. The drop-down arrow will display the Boolean operators that we have discussed. Then you can link it with the appropriate Boolean operator. Then repeat the second search term if it's available. The plus sign here allows you to add more fields if you need it. In this advanced search option, you have the option to limit by publication date. So you can determine the dates that you want of the literature you want displayed. Then you have content type. You can even limit to discipline here and language. You can also limit to the options here, items with full text online and so on. And over here, you have the option to exclude certain results if you choose. So let's bear in mind as we communicate these to our trainees that the more options we take, the less results we get. The more options we take, the less results we get. So this is what the advanced search option looks like. The next thing we're going to look at is performing the search itself and the tools and databases that we can use in performing the search. Most of the tools and databases are internet-based, and they may consist of books, journal articles, clinical trials, reviews, etc., or a combination of all these. So these databases we are talking about have the literature that we need for the research that we want to embark on. But then the mode of access is determined by whether it is free and open source or fee-based. If it's free, then we don't need any username and password to access it. But if it's subscribed or proprietary, then like maybe a Science Direct or a Clinical Key, then we need to either access it by username or by IP address, which will be the option that will be provided to the databases provided by the college for the proprietary databases. But for free databases like Hinari, what you need is a username and password. Then you get access. Some of these databases are open access. So let's see what open access resources are. Open access resources, there's been a lot of debate about open access resources. In the past, they were considered not reliable enough, but times have changed and they could be defined as unrestricted online access to peer-reviewed scholarly research. It's helpful for us to also understand that the open access movement came about as revolt against the high prices that publishers offered and therefore made their resources impossible to get. So the open access resources came to mitigate that and to make research more freely available. So they are very, very, very reliable because they are also peer reviewed. So we need to communicate that to our trainees. And they are useful to researchers, students, academics, and anybody who chooses to do research. Here are some examples of databases. I mean, there are lots more, but these are ones that are useful for your trainees. We have Hinari. Hinari is actually free, but an institution must apply for it and be given access. So the institution, when it applies for it, will be given username and password. So it's important that the trainees get in touch with the college in order to be given the username and password of Hinari to be able to search it for the needed full text. Then we have PubMed, which is essentially a citation database, but you can get full text of open resources, open access resources from PubMed. Then we have Google Scholar. Again, this is a reliable resource preferred to Google because this is I would say the academic wing of Google. This is where you get the academic resources. And sometimes it provides full text access. But even if it doesn't, at least you can get references which will allow you to then go to the full text databases to find the specific full text. Then we have AJOL. AJOL is African Journals Online. And this is a database of articles published in Africa by Africans. So I think it's a very useful resource that can be communicated to our trainees. So this is what Research for Life Hinari looks like. So you just click on this, then it takes you to the Hinari page. So this is Hinari, and these are the contents. There's something I'd like to say about Research for Life. In searching here, you actually will search for all the databases in Research for Life. That's many. I think there are about 4 of them, including Hinari, that you have access to. But then if you want to limit to Hinari, you can do that. Just like clicking on this drop-down arrow. Then Hinari comes up and you click on it. Then you have direct access to Hinari. I think I have it. I'll show it in a bit. But what I wanted to talk about here is that these are the contents available in Research for Life, of which Hinari is a part. We have journals, we have books, we have reference sources, we have databases, free collections, and the publishers' recent resources. I think Hinari is a great resource that our trainees could use to search for the literature. So this is content associated with Hinari here. So we have here Hinari, and the number is there, and Agora, and so on. So you can limit your search and search for Hinari on this page by clicking on collections, selecting Hinari, it brings you here. And I'd like to mention that in as much as we can search PubMed on its own, I would encourage us to inform our trainees that they can actually access PubMed from Hinari. And that provides more access to full text from PubMed than PubMed on its own. So how do you do that? you click on content and a drop-down arrow appears and you click on the databases. A list of databases are displayed in alphabetical order. And in that list is PubMed. So here's PubMed in that list. So when you click on PubMed, it takes you directly to PubMed. So this is PubMed through Hinari. When you look at the URL, you realize that it begins with Research for Life. Then you know you have logged into PubMed through Hinari. Then you just embark on your search here in PubMed through Hinari. And a search was done for hypertension control physical activity. Now, just a word about PubMed. PubMed searches best when the keywords are not done as a phrase search. When we do a phrase search in PubMed, we limit its capability. PubMed search better when we you see here, I just wrote hypertension control physical activity. PubMed will sort it out and give you the needed results. But another thing I'd like to point out here is that a search through PubMed provides you with this access to information in Hinari, which searching PubMed directly does not give you. That's why we need to encourage our trainees to do this search of PubMed through Hinari. And that means contacting the college for the login details so that they can search PubMed through Hinari, apart from the other numerous benefits that Hinari gives. Now, I just want to explain what PubMed does. You see, we did not put the key concepts in quotation marks, but then what PubMed does is that it searches and identifies and links the needed search terms with the appropriate operators, which is what you see here. So the mesh term that is found is hypertension. Then it finds other terms and links it with the appropriate operator. So if you look carefully at this, you realize that the or is linked with related concepts. Okay. So that's how PubMed works. And the and is used to link the unrelated concepts. Then we have how it carried out the search, So for hypertension, it searched for the mesh term hypertension. Then it includes any other terms that it considers as an alternate concept. So the point we are trying to make here is that with PubMed is you get a better search than results if you don't put your key concepts in double quotation marks. If you do that, you limit the capability of PubMed. So this is how it interprets hypertension. All these are the words it uses and searches for in the database to give you results. That's unknown to us. Then physical activity. These are the terms it also looks for and finds results on. So this is how PubMed works. And I just thought it would be good to explain it. So as we use PubMed and communicate this to our trainees, that's one database in which we don't need to do a phrase search. We can just put our topics in and PubMed interprets it for us and does the search and provides the needed results. Now, this is Google Scholar. This is what Scholar looks like. This is a search page for Google Scholar. And this the search results for hypertension control and physical activity. So unlike PubMed, with Scholar, it's important that our key concepts that have 2 or more words are put in quotation marks to get good search results. So this is what we have here. So you see that the key concepts that have been put in quotation marks we see them together: physical activity over here and hypertension control here, they are searched together as one term and presented as such in the results. Now, this is an example of a filter bar, a Google Scholar filter bar, which I'd like to make reference to. So even after the search, you can always refine your results by making use of this filter bar. I think I'll go back to the PubMed search and show you the filter bar there. So this is the filter bar for the PubMed. Again, you have options to filter and refine your search when you carry out your search. Initially, you can refine it by using the filter bar. So that's Google Scholar. Then this is African Journals Online. This is African Journals Online. And this is a search option. And these are you can actually browse by journals to know the journals that have been, that are in there. You can browse by discipline. You can browse by the countries and their, the countries that have contributed to this and the journals that they provide, that each country provides. So this is a search page for African Journals Online. So a search was done for hypertension control and physical activity, and these are the results. So again, you get full text to the open access resources. But the good thing about this is that at least, even if the full text isn't provided, the trainees are made aware of the existence of some of these research that they could follow through and get the full text. So that's it for the databases, search tools, and so on. Now, I'd like to talk about creating alerts. Creating alerts is another way by which we find literature. And I think it will be helpful for our trainees to be aware of it. So why alerts? We create alerts so that we keep up to date with the current literature without having to go back to the publisher's website. And this is very important and very useful if we are embarking on any kind of research. So an alert may be described as a saved search. So an alert cannot be created if a search is not carried out. So an alert is created after a search is done and is scheduled to run at certain intervals. And if there are any new results, for some of the database, you determine the intervals by which you get the results. And if any new results are found, it is sent to your email. The saved search could be an author search, it could be a keyword search, it could be a subject search, it could be a title search. But again, it varies from database to database. So how do we create alerts? The main thing that we need to understand and communicate to our trainees is that it's important that we create accounts with the databases that we want to create alerts for. So we create accounts, we are registered with the database, we have a username and password. The alerts are normally created after a search has been carried out on the results page. So here's an example of a search done in Scholar and how we can create an alert in Google Scholar. To create an alert after the search, when you look to the left, you see create alert, you click on it. So you are given the option to create the alert. But let's bear in mind that to be able to create an alert with Google Scholar, our trainees need to understand that they need to have Gmail accounts. They need to. So that's the way by which they register with Google Scholar. They must have a Gmail account. It's very cumbersome to create an alert with a non-Gmail account. It's so frustrating that at a point you give up. So it's advised that you must have a Gmail account. So then here it is. Then you just click on create alert. Then the alert is created. Then subsequently, as new results are found on a particular search, it is pushed to your email for you to consult. So alert is created, and whenever there's any new information, it is sent to your email address. The alert may be canceled at any time. It's not set in stone. You can go to your profile, manage your alerts, delete alerts, create new ones. So as I said earlier, it's easier if you have a Gmail account. So that's what you have to do to create an alert in Scholar. To conclude, in performing a search, some databases allow you, before you set out to apply related terms, you may choose that option. That saves you the trouble of looking for alternate concepts. Make use of the search filters to focus the search. For many searches, you have the option of related articles or similar articles. Refer to them if they are available. I should have made you, when you look at the Google Scholar search, maybe we should just go back. I just want to refer to something there. Sorry about that. You see here cited by. It's helpful to look at the cited by, and more often than not, they may be relevant to your research, and they help to make the search easy and help you find more relevant results. So you see here also related articles at the bottom of this. Helpful to look at them also. You find this also in the PubMed search. PubMed has similar articles. So in performing a search, let's bear in mind that those options help us to find relevant literature for our research. So in conclusion, you look out for the cited by, you check the references cited in any relevant research or material retrieved. So definitely there are times when we find very relevant articles. Let's take our time, look at the reference list, communicate this to our trainees so that they look at the reference list. Invariably, they'll find relevant articles, which are specific references that they'll need to find the full text for. And register for an account for email alerts to save searches and for so many other things that you can do. If there's a database that you use often, it's helpful to create an account so that you have the option to save your searches. I remember I mentioned that it's helpful to keep a trail of the searches that you have done. If you create an account in a database, it helps to keep a trail of all the searches, the history of all the searches you have ever done. Unless you delete it, it's always there. So long as you search after you have logged in with your details. So in performing the search, let's communicate these things to our trainees so that they'll be able to find relevant literature for the research that they'll be embarking on and find it beneficial. So thank you.